Side 4. Euphemie looked out of the window. She was somewhere between London and Brighton, passing the backs of suburban houses. Always in the past she had privately derided these houses and their occupants for being boring and right-wing, desperately struggling after the ever-illusory concepts of safety and stability. Now, however, they looked rather inviting. She had lived on Clapham Common North Side for 7 years. In that time she hadn't decorated the flat, repaired anything. She barely tidied it, usually only in a frenzied panic when Geoffrey returned home. Geoffrey, who she took to be a standard closeted gay public schoolboy type, offered her a room in his flat. He was about to go to Washington. It was all too good to be true. Before his appearance on the fateful morning, he had sent a card, a fax, an email, and left no less than 3 telephone messages warning of his arrival. All of them had managed to slip through the chaos of Euphemie's existence. As soon as he opened the door to his flat, he found a half-naked man with a black eye, the charred remains of an old woman on the kitchen floor, and Euphemie looking more ravaged and dishevelled than he thought possible. 2 days of misery followed, not helped by the arrival of an alarmingly young, breast-enhanced, dark-haired American girl. It was Winter Kimberly, Geoffrey's bride-to-be. The train pulled into Brighton station. The tears welled up as Euphemie approached the taxi rank. She had done everything wrong, and everything had gone wrong. There was nothing left to do but go home. And what a home to have to go to.
"I always knew Geoffrey was a bastard,"
said her mother. "Oh, Mum, it's not that. I was awful."
"You looked after his house for years, and what thanks do you get? They come back expecting everything in perfect order. Then they dump you with some young floozy. What does she do?"
She's a dancer, I think." Euphemie's mother had been a dancer, who through lack of funds in the late 60s and early 70s had resorted to the rougher arm of the trade, displaying her magnificent body to what was still, in those days, the true Dirty Mac Brigade. She had caught the eye of a young architect called Roger Hollingford, and ended up in bed with him. When she was 8 months pregnant, and just about to be evicted, Roger came back to see her, completely unannounced. He had married Alice and come into a lot of money. He admitted to being a swine, but he wasn't a pig, a quote that Grace Betterment had often repeated. Baby Euphemie was born just 3 months before his wife gave birth to baby Gresham. When Roger became Sir Roger, and his company won a huge building contract in Abu Dhabi, he created an endowment for 5-year-old Euphemie. Each summer, Euphemie went on a summer holiday with her family, leaving her tearful mother in Hove with only rum for company. Each Christmas, even more painfully for Grace, Euphemie went skiing in the French Alps with the richer family. "I've lost everything," she said, "and it's all my fault. It must be genetic. It must be." In between sobs she said, "Gresham's right. We are born like this. We have to stay the same the whole of our lives." Then the emotion was too much. The walls burst, the dams gave way, and the flood erupted. "I helped Ian to be just the sort of man Gresham would like, and he doesn't like me. Of course he doesn't. It's so unfair." Euphemie's wail echoed through the small flat, and although her mother held her head softly in her lap, she was inconsolable. Ian awoke feeling hugely comfortable, luxuriously relaxed, refreshed and clean. This was the first morning of the new Ian, the man, not the mouse. He was no longer a virgin. He had at last, at the age of 31, experienced full sex. Not only that, this beautiful lady lying next to him was none other than the future Mrs. Ringfold, the wonderful Gresham Hollingford.
Hi, Stanners,
said Gresham suddenly. She slipped out of bed and walked around carrying the phone's base unit. Ian shut his eyes as soon as her naked form came into view. She spoke quietly, but Ian could hear very well.
I know, Stanhope, but Please listen. I love you forever. I always have. Okay, I'm coming back today. Yes, bye.
She put the phone back down in the cradle and stood staring out of the window. Ian had no idea what to do. Should he confront her? What's happening?
I've got work to do, big boy. Can't laze about in bed all day with a stud.
Is that me?
Of course it's you, you great horse.
Ian felt waves, not ripples, waves of sadness and pride washing over him. What about me?
What about you?
Well, how do I get home?
Oh, diddums, I'll drive the boo-boo home.
After I've gone home, what do I do? I mean, about getting married, about us.
Oh, I see. Well, I need time to think about it.
Okay. Ian felt the rejection coming and tried to cover himself. You ring me when you're ready.
Oh, Ian,
said Gresham. She launched herself on him again, and they proceeded to make love for nearly 2 hours. Gresham talked to her film people all the way into Northampton.
I'll call you,
she said as she dropped him off on the Wellingborough Road. He nodded and waved as he watched the car pull away. She didn't wave back.
Yo, Ian, my man, what's happening?
Ian spun round. Wall-eyed Eddie was pimp-rolling along the street towards him. Blimey, Eduardo, what a pleasant surprise. Have you got the day off or something?
Night shift tonight,
said Eddie glumly.
You working?
No, nothing cooking in the old income department. That's a bit of a depression zone in point of fact.
They're looking for someone in Rixon's.
You're kidding.
Bellum guy?
Eddie offered his new mobile. It was an Ericsson EP30. A grade 1 piece of mobile hardware. What's the number?
It's in the auto dial.
Hello, could I speak to the personnel department, please? Yes, it's Ringfold. Ian Ringfold. Euphemie's return to the offices of the International Children's Trust was routine and low-key. How's it all going?
Fine. Everything is really good,
said Christine. Kevin put the phone down. Euphemie, darling, he said, imitating a theatrical lovey. Marvellous to have you back. I've become so very theatrical since our night at the Royal Albert Hall. I rub shoulders with celebs so much now I barely notice. It was good, wasn't it?
It was brilliant,
said Christine.
Do you know what we raised?
No.
£462,000.
Oh, my God.
Now dry up those silly old tears and tell us what's been happening.
Over a cup of fair trade tea, Euphemie related the terrible account of the events that had taken place after the benefit. She suddenly remembered Richard.
Oh, he's been staying with me,
said Christine.
He's really dried out, but, well...
What?
Well, he thinks he's really blown it with you and, well, that the marriage is sort of off.
I don't know what to do.
Do you love him?
I don't know. And what about Ian? Has anyone heard from him? One email. He's working in a Rixon's electronics store in Northampton, said Kevin. He sent a picture of himself in the corporate shirt with the corporate badge. He looks okay.
What are you going to do?
Asked Christine. I don't know. Richard thinks I hate him. Ian hates me. My sister hates everybody.
Oh, Euphemie, Ian doesn't hate you. You've got to go to the wedding. You've absolutely got to go. With Ian. After all you've done. Oh, I wish I could come, just to see her face when she finds out.
Well, whatever. If we don't go to the wedding, I lose the better part of £8,000, so I suppose we've got to do it. I've run up a huge bill. I'm really in the shit. I'm so stupid. Euphemie looked at the horrendous pile on her desk. An expensive envelope stood out from the manila morass. An invitation for her and Richard to the wedding, in Stanton Harcourt Church in Oxfordshire, and later a reception in the grounds of Landgate House just outside the village. She tapped the invitation on her nose for a while. Then she scribbled a note on the back of the envelope and handed it to Kevin. "Can you email this to Mr. Ringfold, please, Kevin?" The Moss Bros Hire Department in Covent Garden was never particularly quiet, but on a Friday evening in summer it was a chaotic scrabble. Ian stood trouserless in a fitting room for over half an hour, waiting for someone to return with a pair of dress pants that might fit him. Finally, a flustered assistant handed Ian some trousers. He emerged to be judged by Christine and Euphemie, who were waiting outside. "Spectacular," said Euphemie.
Really amazing,
said Christine. "Lovely."
Gorgeous.
Thank you, ladies. Oops, sorry, I used the old L word.
Euphemie wagged her finger. "In this sort of environment, and in this particular context, where ladies can be used in a slightly ironical postmodern way, it's perfectly acceptable, even slightly droll."
Is it?
"Yes, it implies you know it's pretty naff. That's what I've been trying to show. All the silly manners that still exist, all the exclusive tricks that Gresham and her awful husband used to exclude people and put them down. I want to show that they can be learned by everyone."
I see.
Ian scratched his head.
I think. Is that good, then, to make them valueless?
Yes, it brings them down to the level the rest of the world has to live in. Ian duly removed the suit and got back into his Chevignon jeans, his R.M. Williams elastic-sided boots, and his blue Thomas Pink shirt.
"Let's get something to eat,"
said Christine when they emerged into the hot evening sun. "I've booked a table at Belgo Central. Listen, Ian, I've invited some old friends to join us. They're all dying to meet you."
Oh, crumbs.
"It's nothing heavy. They just want to see if what I've said about you is true."
So it's a sort of test, then?
No, not at all. Honestly, I wouldn't do that to you.
Yes, you would. You'd love to.
Ian felt warm and safe with Euphemie. She was odd as hell, but still lovely. He knew that if he was ever in a position to make a choice between these two sisters, he would be torn. The choice for a young man would be simple. Go with Gresham. You only live once. Shag while ye may, etc. But he also knew that was how she lived too, and she would drop him, had dropped him, and left him badly hurt. They walked the short distance to the restaurant. Euphemie stopped in front of a table where 3 women were already sitting. "This is Ian." He smiled at the women. 2 of them made cowgirl whoops. All of them smiled at him, a row of glistening eyes and teeth.
"Who's he going to sit next to?"
"Not you, Annie. He wouldn't last 2 seconds," said Euphemie. Ian and Christine sat on one side of the long table. Facing him, 4 women giggled and nudged each other. "This is Annie Pinnock. She's on the board," said Euphemie. "Cicely you know, and this is Kirsty Walk." Ian recognized her as the woman who often presented Newsnight on BBC Two. "Hello, Ian. This is a treat for all of us."
"Thanks. It's a treat for me too."
"Okay, Ian, now that you're here, tell us why," said Annie. "Why do you lot write down the numbers painted on the side of railway trains?" "Annie, really, be a bit generous." "No, fuck it. I want to know." "It is rather intriguing," said Kirsty.
"Well, let me see. Some people like writing down the numbers of trains because it's interesting. I mean, you could, if you so wished, take up articulated lorry spotting and eventually work out the routing system used by, for instance, the supermarket chains.
So, why aren't you a systems manager?
I don't have the necessary qualifications.
Okay, tell us about the internet, said Kirsty Walk. Do you just use it to look at porn?
The internet is just millions of computers talking to each other. Yes, there is a large amount of pornography available, but that only makes up about 2% of the total content.
So, do you look at it?
Asked Annie.
Ian shrugged.
Yes, I have done.
So, Ian, said Kirsty, do you lust after schoolgirls?
I don't think I've ever done that. Not since I left school, anyway.
Ian was used to this. He had heard the women in the staff room at the supermarket have similar, if not as articulate, conversations. Men were all the same. They all lusted after schoolgirls and left their wives for younger women. The arrival of the food broke the tension. Ian watched as the women downed their large glasses of light-flavoured beer. They ate the vast Belgian sausages ravenously. Kirsty and Euphemie had muscles. This man, said Annie through a mouthful of sweet cabbage, is a fucking marvel. She pointed at Ian with her fork. He can sit down at a table with 5 stroppy women, hold his own, not start sulking, not try and dominate the conversation, not try and show off, look fucking gorgeous, only eat salad, and I'll swear he hasn't farted since he sat down. Ian tried to remember if he had. He didn't think so.
It's quite an achievement, said Cicely. But then you had good material to start with.
She smiled at Ian.
Sorry, love, to talk about you as if you were an exhibit, but we've all followed Euphemie's project with interest.
Yes, well done, said Kirsty.
It is ever so amazing,
said Christine, touching Ian's arm.
He's such a lovely man.
Listen, said Annie, slamming down her beer glass. What Ian did was be honest. Yes, he's looked at porn. Yes, he's fancied schoolgirls. He was a bit of a train spotter, but he's moved beyond that. Here's a toast to the honest man. She raised her glass, as did all the women. And good luck for tomorrow, said Kirsty Walk. Knock her dead, she deserves it. Clearly these women all knew Gresham, and just as clearly they were not that fond of her. As the group slowly left the restaurant, Ian walked by Euphemie's side. Thank you, Ian. That truly was a wonderful display. You were brilliant. He looked at her carefully as they walked, her long neck suddenly looking very inviting. He wanted to bite it, bury his head there, and breathe in deeply. The party regrouped in the piazza. They stood around watching the activity. Annie smoked. Kirsty called her husband on a mobile phone. Christine complained.
Oh, my legs ache so much. I need to sit down.
Cicely stood separated from the rest, looking up at the night sky.
It's a special night, she said. I can feel it. It's going to be a special day tomorrow.
Yes, I think you're right, said Euphemie, and she squeezed Ian's arm. He smiled at her. These women are all mad, he thought. Harmless, but quite mad. Still, he could use them as templates for his Java applet woman spotting program. His fingers were itching to get on his keyboard. When Gresham turned around and looked at herself in the gilt-edged mirror of the green bedroom at Landgate House, she took her own breath away. No less than 3 dressers, all from the professional theatre, had been hired to help her through the day.
Oh, darling, I have dreamt of this day for absolutely yonks, said her mother. You look so gorgeous, darling.
Gresham made her descent down the main stairs at Landgate House to have the first of the pictures taken for Hello magazine. Once the photographer was satisfied, Her father escorted her to the small church in Stanton Harcourt, less than half a mile away. Sir Roger was already half cut and taking discreet nips from a hip flask.
Nervous?
He asked.
What a fucking cliched question, Father. Sitting in a Rolls Royce with your father in a wedding dress, going to a church, and you ask if I'm bloody nervous?
You're getting married. It's wonderful. I know you're going to be happy. And you found a very rich man who doesn't mind you having a career. That is an unusual catch, believe me. Anyway, I think it's marvellous, darling. And you know I wish the absolute best for you. Bloody hell, it's costing me enough.
He laughed as he said this. However, the laugh turned into a cough, and Sir Roger Hollingford turned a bright shade of puce. He took another nip from his silver hip flask. Gresham patted him on the back.
Don't go and die on me now, Dad.
Gresham thought she just caught sight of Ian Ringfold outside the church door.
I don't fucking believe it.
What?
Asked her father. Gresham was just about to explain when she remembered what it was she was going to explain. The car pulled to a halt. Sir Roger got out first and helped Gresham maneuver her train out of the car.
Okie diddly doodly,
Gresham whispered to her father.
Here we go.
The music started as she approached the ancient wooden doors. Gresham, Alice, Oriel Hollingford, and Stanhope, Vivian, Seston, Ossel, Hubert de Courcy stood next to each other facing the vicar. The combining of two great houses, the Hollingford fortune in the region of 80 million, the de Courcy fortune in the low billions. It was a match made in heaven, and Gresham could see that the vicar was very chipper. He had discovered that morning that he would get a new church roof out of it and change, thanks to the Hollingford Foundation. Euphemia had felt quite tearful during the service. She had never been that keen on weddings, but this one was her half-sister's, someone she had known all her life. She was happy for her sister, and also felt rather proud of what she had managed to do. She walked out of the church with Ian, shaking hands with the vicar at the door. Everywhere she looked, people were being polite. People were deferring to each other, letting someone else go first, shaking hands with each other, kissing the air.
We're doing photographs back at the house,
said her father when she joined him by the gate.
Bit public here.
There was a smattering of celebrity faces at the occasion. Euphemia had kept a weather eye out for Ian to see how he reacted when he saw them. He had, thankfully, behaved impeccably.
Who's the fellow you're with, darling?
Ian Ringfold, father. He's a computer wizard, complete brain box.
Oh, I see. The new beau, is he?
No, father, he's just a friend.
What about that dreadful sculptor chappie?
Richard? Well, that's more or less all over.
More or less?
It's complicated. Suddenly, Nona Wilfred walked up to her.
Hi, are you Gresh's sister?
Yes, hello. Very nice to meet you, Nona.
Isn't this just the most beautiful wedding? Just like the Hugh Grant movie, isn't it? I wonder if I'll meet a stiff Englishman today.
There's plenty of those here.
I like you,
said the actress.
You're so rude.
She brushed her luxuriant hair out of her eyes and cast a glance in Ian's direction.
Oh my God, he's delectable.
Do you think so?
So handsome, so intelligent looking. Is he yours?
Mine? Oh, heavens no.
Well, introduce me then.
Nona and Euphemia walked the short distance across the sun-drenched graveyard. Ian, this is Nona Wilfred.
Will you escort me to the reception, Ian?
Nona asked with a twinkle. Euphemia felt a shockwave go through her. She didn't want this woman taking over Ian. Ian, sorry to barge in. I think it's best if we go to the reception together. She turned to Nona. Ian doesn't know anyone here, you see, so it's sort of not the done thing.
I do understand. The done thing, don't you know?
She tried to sound plummy and English, and failed. Sorry, and everything. Euphemie walked through the crowd pulling Ian's sleeve.
Are you jealous or something?
No, of course not. I just didn't want you to get into a compromising situation with her. I know you've kept your virginity up until now.
Blimey, I've never heard you speak like this before. Are you okay?
They followed the other guests through the picturesque village to the house, which was obscured by a 10-foot-high Cotswold stone wall bedecked with ivy and Kifsgate roses. Even Euphemie was swept along with the excitement of the day. She had never visited the house before that morning, but even with her greater exposure to the lives of the rich and famous, this place took some beating. Please, Ian, absolute top-of-the-range behaviour. You know how much is at stake here.
Okie diddly doodly.
Ian walked into the vast marquee and breathed in the heady atmosphere. He was checking for celebrities, but there didn't seem to be many about. He had done well to get Richard E. Grant's autograph. It didn't seem that Euphemie had noticed. "Hello, are you Richard?" asked a man who was wearing a very colourful waistcoat and who smelt of the same aftershave as Jake the bodybuilder at the gym.
No, I'm Ian, actually.
"I'm Steve, colleague of Stanhope's. You're very good-looking." The man smiled and studied Ian's face carefully. Ian felt it blush. He suddenly realized that this man, holding his hand and standing quite close to him, was actually a bona fide, fully paid-up member of the Ben Doonan Phil McCavity Brigade. He didn't know what to do. "Are you gay? Or not?" asked Steve.
Blimey. I don't think so.
Oh, what a shame. What a waste. He pushed a business card into Ian's pocket, smiled, gave him the lightest peck on the cheek, and walked away.
I see you just had the old Steve Carson let's go and get dirty proposition,
said a young man with enormous buck teeth.
He's a raving woof. I prefer the term gay, actually. So does he. I'm Piers, by the way, Stan's brother. You're here with Euphemie, aren't you?
Yes, I am, as a matter of fact.
If you ask me, between you, me, and the Marquis, I think she's by far the nicer of the two gals. Gresham's hard as nails, don't you think? Or don't you know her?
People see Euphemie as being softer, more demure, less demanding, but believe me, that woman has an iron grip on what's going on around her. Imagine a graph where the horizontal axis was a woman's height and the vertical her weight. Any woman can now be measured with a ruler and a set of scales and then reduced to a single point in the graph. This is called a two-dimensional phase space.
You've lost me.
Okay, a three-dimensional phase space is easy to imagine. Just think of a fly in a room. Instead of locating the fly according to its position in terms of length, breadth and height, we imagine the fly's position to represent something like mood, emotional stability and biological clock pressure. For instance, a man using my program might only want to have sex with women whose virtual flies were located in a complex polyhedral space somewhere in the middle of the room.
Fucking brilliant. Excellent, Ian. Bloody hell, sounds brilliant, because I, for one, do not understand girls one fucking bit.
Join the old club, mate, said Ian.
I mean to say, you should see the film Gresham made when she was at film school. It's bloody hardcore.
Is it?
I've got a copy up in my room. Do you want to have a quick gander?
Fantastic, said Ian, and he and Piers set off across the luxurious lawn towards the massive front door of the old house. As they walked, 3 similar-aged young men tagged along, all wearing morning suits and wing collars, all with similar mop-top haircuts to Piers.
Don't mind them. These are my posse from school.
Ian followed Piers up the massive oak staircase, along a corridor, and into a room with a mauve door.
Sorry, it's a bit of a mess,
said Piers.
It's a fucking disgrace, De Courcy. Report to me at once,
said one of the other boys.
Fuck off,
said Piers, and they all laughed.
No, seriously, I thought we could all have one last look,
he said, as he pushed the tape into a Sony all-in-one TV VCR. Ian turned his attention to the film. The title appeared. Down on Me, by Gresham Hollingford. There were then some very shaky camera shots of a man performing cunnilingus, intercut with sunlight coming through trees and water running off a man's back. The scene cut to another man, and another similar adventure, and another, and another. Piers ejected the tape.
My new sister-in-law,
he said, his massive teeth glinting in the sunlight coming in through the long shuttered windows.
Now I'm fucking ravenous. Will you join us, Ringfeld, old chap? We're off the trough.
Ian said nothing, just smiled, and followed the noisy rabble down the wide stairs again. And there, at the bottom, was Euphemie, standing in the corner next to a large bronze statue of a naked man with a sword. You're well in with Piers. What did you talk about? He showed me Gresham's first film. I don't think I've ever seen it, said Euphemie. I don't think you'd forget it if you had. Ian led her out into the hot summer sunshine. Lovely day for a wedding. I saw Gresham look at you in the church. She clearly remembers you. You must have made a very big impression on her. They entered the tent and stood face to face with Richard Markham and Christine Hanks. Richard was looking slightly haggard in a fly-blown morning suit. Ian smiled broadly, glanced at Euphemie, and saw the colour drain from her face. What are you doing here?
We got invited,
said Christine as grandly as she could.
Sorry, Euphemie, it's all my fault,
said Richard.
I really need to talk to you. You see, I'm marrying Christine, and we're having a baby.
Blimey, O'Reilly. Please don't say that, Ian. Gordon H. Bennett. Congratulations are in order, I believe. Ian kissed Christine on the cheek and shook hands with a very nervous and depressed-looking Richard. Oh, my God, said Euphemie. How could you do this to me? Oh, my God, why did you tell me now, here, today?
Are you really angry?
Asked Christine naively. Ian, come with me. You two can sort yourselves out.
Euphemie, come back,
said Richard.
We've got to talk about it.
Fuck off, Richard. Ian followed her as best he could through the crowds of people looking for their names on the place settings. Fucking bastard. Fucking fat slag bitch. How could you do that to me? I don't believe it. Ian stared at her. He had never heard her swear before. It was very shocking. It was also very exciting. The food arrived with great speed, the waiters and waitresses almost running while carrying armfuls of plates. The yellow and green salad-type product looked decidedly strange, but tasted delicious. Ian had certainly never seen anything like it in Besco's very respectable series of cookery books. Quite a bit of organisation required for a feast of this scale, he said to the very old lady beside him.
Indeed, it must be. Are you a friend of the groom?
No, the bride and her sister.
I knew you weren't family. You look like a fellow I knew in India. Are you engaged to Miss Betterment?
Goodness me, no. We're just good friends.
Pity. She's a lovely woman. Tell me, Are you a practicing homosexual?
No, I'm not, as a matter of fact.
There were plenty of them around in my day, only we called them pansies. I only ask because you make such a handsome couple. It seems to make sense that you should tie the knot.
Oh, I see. Well, I'll certainly think about it.
Ian turned and smiled at Euphemie. The speeches started. Suddenly, when he was miles away from the laughter and clapping in the huge marquee, Euphemie pushed her chair back and stood up next to Ian. All I want to say is I've known Gresham all my life, more or less. A small laugh rippled through part of the audience. I think she's the most amazing woman I have ever met. Stanhope, I wish you luck, but then I don't really need to because Gresham loves you. And let me assure you, she has never loved another man. You're the only one.
Rubbish! He's a wanker!
Shouted a very plummy voice from the back, eliciting a huge laugh. I wish both of them all the luck in the world together, said Euphemie, bravely talking over the noise. To Gresham and Stanhope.
Gresham and Stanhope,
said the entire gathering. Euphemie sat down, and Ian gave her a peck on the cheek. Well done. Everyone clapped and cheered again, and the family closed in around the married couple. The gathering was beginning to disperse.
Should we go and see Gresham?
Yes, I suppose we should. Gresh, I'm so happy for you, said Euphemie as they finally reached their goal. Thanks, Phemie. The two women embraced. This is Ian, said Euphemie as she stood back from Gresham. You remember, he was at your engagement party. So, you really are the train spotter, said Gresham. At last there was a clue. Ian could see a small blemish, a flush on her neck. I really didn't think you could do it, Euphemie, but you did. I told Stanhope you were Euphemie's latest boyfriend, and he said you looked like the most handsome man in the marquee. So, there you go.
Golly.
He can escort me as a special treat. We'll be somewhere outside, by the house. Gresham took Ian's hand and walked through the crowd, accepting kisses and admiration from everyone they passed. She led him into a small area containing dozens of huge red propane gas cylinders. As soon as the flap was down, Gresham pulled Ian towards her and kissed him with an almost violent passion.
Bloody hell, you've got to be fucking kidding.
Please, one more time, please, Ian.
I can't. You're married.
Please, Ian, I just have to have you one last time. She pulled his hair downwards. He felt his knees bend. His body came to rest, and his nose was pushing against the divine bulge of her pubic bone. She moved her pelvis in the way he had come to know so well. Suddenly she stopped. He glanced to one side. Then he felt something wet on his leg. He could see a pair of legs next to his, and glanced further up just to confirm what he already knew. Oh my God, said Euphemie. She was holding a glass of water at such an angle that it was spilling on the grass and on Ian. Euphemie turned from them and was violently sick in the corner. Oh, that's nice. Thank you, said Gresham immediately. Let's go into the house, Ian. You can finish there. Ian pulled himself to his full height.
Gresham, I would sooner go down on a dead baboon by the grave of my mother than ever see you again.
Gresham had started to leave before he could finish. Send me a bill, half-sister. I'll make sure you get your money. Ian passed Euphemie a handkerchief.
You okay?
She stood up and wiped her eyes.
I have to get out of here. Ian pulled at the canvas wall where it was lashed together in one corner. If we go this way, we don't need to see anyone. They reached the car park after an invigorating 20-minute walk. It was only as they reached Euphemie's hire car, a Ford car £39.95 a day from budget, that Ian realised they hadn't spoken at all. "I never want to see you ever again," said Euphemie, once they had driven out of the village and had reached open country. Ian felt angry now. How could he win her round? Should he tell her that he really loved her? Could he tell her he'd much rather go down on her any day of the week? No, she'd take offence. She's won again. I just don't believe it. How could she? What drives her? What has she got? She's not human! The car started to lurch around rather violently. Ian gripped the sides of his seat in terror. Then the car hit the bank. When it finally came to a stop, the silence was completely unexpected. Ian realized he was in pain. He quickly looked at Euphemie. She was more or less lying across the now slightly bent steering wheel. A deflated airbag half engulfed her head. She slowly sat back. Then Euphemie sobbed. Her face folded into despair, and time started running at its usual pace. Ian heard an engine. A yellow tractor pulled itself gingerly through the gate. A gentle-looking man with a shock of grey hair jumped down from the cab. "You all right?" Think so, more or less." "Young lady okay, is she?" "She's a bit upset, but no serious injury." "You wait there." He reached into the cab of the tractor and pulled out a mobile phone. "I'm sorry," said Euphemie, through a veil of tears. Ian turned to look at her. They held hands. "I nearly killed you." "No, it's fine." "I've made your life a mess. I've given you a taste of a life you can never have." "I don't want that life, thank you very much. I've got my own." He saw the man from the tractor lean in through Euphemie's window. She didn't seem to notice him. She was looking at Ian in a way he'd never seen before. "I wish I could kiss you, Ian, but you've just been doing something with your mouth that I don't want to get involved in." "I won't ask," said the man softly. "There's an ambulance on its way." The next thing Ian knew, he was being wheeled down a corridor in a hospital. A face appeared in his field of vision, pale and tense, but familiar and very beautiful. "Ian, you're okay. It's me, Euphemie. You just lost a bit of blood. You're fine." "Oh, Ian, please forgive me." She held his hand. He squeezed hers. "Have you finished?" asked the doctor. "I'd like to put a few stitches in your head before it gets any steamier in here." "Sorry," said Euphemie. "I promise I'll never go down on your half-sister again." The doctor gently wiped the blood off Ian's forehead. "You soon think you've heard everything in this job, but there's always something new." "What's it like being married to someone so rich?" asked Jennifer Cornwell, the Australian journalist. "I've never not had money, so I don't know," said Gresham. "Oh, right. I really liked Uncle Roger, by the way. I thought the critics were a bunch of sexist assholes." "Thank you." "Don't mention it, mate. The piece will be in Elle magazine in the February issue." "Okay," said Gresham, almost smiling at the departing journalist. She stood up and glanced around the room. It was packed with important people in the industry. Sally, the receptionist from the office, almost fell past her. "Sals, who's that bloke Stanhope's talking to?" "It's Damon fucking Rooks." "Who's he?" "Plays for Arsenal, footballer. I thought we were supposed to be a fucking film company." Gresham sat down again. She had been married for 5 years. had actually been with her husband for about 6 months in all that time. She had always known Stanhope was bisexual, had told herself she didn't mind. She had nothing to do, no projects to develop, no scripts to read. Then, just as she felt she had hit the bottom, she had been invited to the Allied Fountain party. It was only later she realized she'd been invited to the party, but not to any meetings.
Fuck, I hate this business.
No one heard. Ian almost trotted the short distance from his office down the stairs, along the hall, and up to the front door. "Eduardo, me old Palarucci, come in, come in."
"I'm well soaked. Walked here, Guy. Wheels off the road."
"Want a coffee?" Ian went into the tiny Cyril Street kitchen and put the kettle on.
5 sugars and no milk, Guy. Busy?
"Very. What about you?"
That's no problem. I just in such a mess at home with a big beanie.
"Marcia?"
She'd been mad as hell, Guy. Nothing seems right, you know what I mean?
"You need a copy of Woman Wizard."
Oh yeah. She got my seed in her fist and she's twisting. I don't need no pewter program to tell me that. I can't believe people have bought this thing.
"In their droves, Eddie. Come upstairs. I'll give you the old world-famous ring-fold run-through." Eddie followed Ian into what had once been Ian's parents' bedroom. It had been transformed into a brightly lit office with 3 massive computers humming away under the work surface. A steel shelving system housed more humming hardware and boxes of Woman Wizard computer programs. A young woman sat in front of a computer screen, speaking quietly into a telephone headset. "Jasmine, she's here 4 days a week now, dealing with telephone inquiries."
You employer?
"Yes, but Eddie, only for secretarial purposes. I'm a family man now. Anyway, have a look at the old Woman Wizard on the end monitor. I've just got to reply to a load of email." Euphemie Betterment felt a little tired. The previous day had started early with a train journey from Torontola station to Florence, then changing for the express to Milan. Ian and Jackson had finished breakfast by the time she joined them, her son sitting demurely with his napkin tucked into his little Gap shirt. They had visited Richard and Christine Markham at Castello del Lago, the old farmhouse now chock full of children. Christine was on her 4th. Richard, on the other hand, looked broken, balding, grey-haired, and very thin. Castello del Lago looked like a wreck. 4 children, 3 boys and a baby girl, could do serious damage to a home. Euphemie still saw Gresham whenever she was in London, not very often. Strangely, since Ian's Woman Wizard program had sold so well, she and Ian had seen Stanhope de Courcy for financial advice, all of which had proved to be very sound. They had bought a roomy but nondescript house in Primrose Hill in London. Ian still worked in Northampton because he felt more comfortable there, and his mother's old house was a free office. Their holiday had been eagerly awaited, as they had both been working very hard leading up to it. The train pulled to a noisy, hissing halt. The rich smell of coal and steam filled the air. Euphemie took the tickets and walked out onto the platform. Ian and Jackson quickly pocketed their notebooks and pencils and stared at their feet as innocently as they could.
"Train's here, Mum,"
said Jackson, as nonchalantly as a 4-year-old is able.
"I can see that, darling."
Euphemie pushed his hair into place and kissed Ian on the cheek.
"What are you 2 boys up to?"
"Nothing," they both replied in unison. "Nothing at all," said Ian.